המציג הבא, אני אציג אותו באנגלית, ומי שזקוק לתרגום הוא יכול לקבל אוזניות בצד הימין. So the next speaker will be Mr. Girish Nadkami. He's a managing director and head of ABB Technology Venture Switzerland. He has been at ABB since 2003, and he was responsible in ABB for Global Coast Migration Program. The problem is that Mr. Nadkami, he began his career as an attorney. He was a lawyer on Wall Street. He was not an engineer. I think that's why he was promoted so quickly. His business career spans Prudential, where he was responsible for creating of financing facilities and has a lot of customers. Mr. Nadkami holds undergraduate and law degrees from University of Bombay, where he was a gold medalist, was a good pupil. Has an LLM from the University of Virginia School of Law, where he was a DuPont Fellow, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. So, Mr. Girish Nadkami, the floor is yours. אני מזמין מיסטר גיריש לתת לנו הצעה בנושא של venture companies. כן, יש תרגום. אני אמרתי שמי שרוצה ומי שלא מתבייש להודות שהוא לא מבין אנגלית, שיקח את האוזניות, יש תרגום לעברית. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Chairman Hein. The moment you said I was a lawyer and not an engineer, I saw half the audience left. It's always encouraging to sort of see half the audience left, and even more encouraging when the lights are at you and you don't really know who's in there. But I think, we have sort of heard all the ministers and the chairmans and speakers and the important people, and now it's time to have some fun. So, why am I speaking here, and what's the topic about? You heard about revolutions, you heard about structural change, you heard about entrepreneurship, etc. And revolutions, disruptions, things like that are really driven by entrepreneurs. It's not driven by governments, it's not driven by large companies, it's driven by entrepreneurs. And I think it's fair to say that the audience will agree with me that electrical engineers tend to be some of the most prolific entrepreneurs out there. So whether it's smart grids, whether it's cybersecurity, a whole range of things, I think electrical engineers are sort of drivers and leaders in the world of entrepreneurship. So let me chat a little bit about what the venture capital world looks like. But before I do that, I need to spend the obligatory few seconds talking about ABB. So I'm just curious, give a room full of electrical engineers, how many people know ABB? Thank you. It's a lot more hands than I was afraid of. So ABB is a global market leader in the automation and power business. We have 5 major divisions. We have revenues of close to 40 billion, and we are in over 110 countries. And just to give you an example, if you look at China, for example, we sold our first transformer in China over 100 years ago. So this isn't something our CEO read an article in The Economist and said, hey, let's go to China. We have been in India for over 60 years, so we are a truly international global company. Just wanted to share with you a couple of slides on how recently we were listed by MIT as one of the top 50 disruptive companies in the world. And as you can see, we are listed even ahead of Apple. I mean, this may be an alphabetical list, but we like to show that we were ahead of Apple. The other one was Thomson Reuters also listed us as one of the most innovative companies in the world. And the reason I say that is because you normally don't think of companies like ABB, older companies, large companies, as being innovators. But we're very, very proud of our record in that. So let me chat a little bit about the world of technology ventures. So ABB Technology Ventures is the corporate venture arm of ABB. So we essentially act in the marketplace as a typical venture capitalist. We make investments in early stage companies which have either technologies or business models of strategic interest to us. So we are geography agnostic, we invest around the world, and we are stage agnostic, so we invest at any stage. And we invest anywhere from a few $100,000 to about $20 million per transaction. And we are a separate entity, and we report into a board consisting of the ABB CEO, CFO, CTO, and 3 division heads. So we get some pretty high-level access, and we discuss our deal flow and et cetera, other things with them. And our selection, see, if I was a venture capitalist, a financial venture capitalist, I would essentially look only at a financial return and say, is this investment going to make me tons of money? As a corporate venture capitalist, I definitely look at that, but I also have to make sure that the company I invest in has a strategic value to us. And I'll chat a little bit about what do we mean by strategic value. So the question then becomes, why does a company like ABB need a corporate venture group? Now, most of you know the name Andy Grove, who was one of the founders and iconic CEOs of Intel. And when Andy Grove retired, he wrote a biography, and the title of the book was, as many of you may remember, was Only the Paranoid Survive. And if you live in Silicon Valley, you have to be paranoid. It doesn't matter whether you're Google, whether you're Microsoft, whether you're Nokia, whether you are Cisco, you have to be paranoid because 5 guys and a dog are sitting in a garage somewhere working on a program which could make you obsolete next week, next month, and next year. So you really can't sit there saying, we are a 50 billion company, we are a 100 billion company. I mean, how many of you remember MySpace? How many of you remember AOL? How many of you remember even names like Alta Vista or Lycos or things like that? So, Microsoft is afraid of Google, Google is afraid of Facebook, Facebook is afraid of Apple, everyone's afraid of everyone, and rightfully so. Now, companies like us, who have been around for 100+ years, really have not historically been forced to be paranoid because the technologies we were in didn't really change. A motor works the same way it does today as it did 100 years ago, and the principle of a transformer is the same today as it was 100 years ago. Things have only become bigger, smaller, faster, cheaper, whatever. But a couple of things have changed in the last 5 or 10 years which have now caused us to be paranoid. And if we haven't been paranoid, it's time we became paranoid. I would just point out 2 major issues. One is the switch from analog to digital. The world is now increasingly becoming digital. And the moment you start saying digital, you're not talking bits and bytes, you're talking networks, you're talking cybersecurity, you're talking databases, you're talking communication, etc. It's a whole different world. And whereas 5 guys and a dog couldn't sit in a garage and come up with a new transformer, it's way too expensive and way too complex and no utility would buy it from a 5 guys and a dog. But in the world of digital technologies, now 5 guys and a dog can make us obsolete and can threaten us. So we need to be worried about that. And the second one, by the way, is changes and the rapid changes in the world of material science. Whether it's turbines, whether it's power electronics, whether it's PV, whether it's membranes, the whole world of material science has a significant impact, and it's again changing very rapidly. And it's also another area where, by the way, as you folks know, Israel is very strong in and has a lot of entrepreneurs in that space. And so as a result of which, you see a lot of emerging technologies, whether it's smart grid, cybersecurity, renewables, etc., where companies like ABB, Siemens, Schneider, etc., it's all new to us. And we need to sort of come up to speed in that. And one of the ways of doing that is by keeping an eye on some of the emerging companies and maybe investing in them, etc. And then we have a whole host of emerging competitors. If you ask somebody 10 years ago, who are your competitors, we would say a Schneider, Alstom, Siemens, Yaskawa, etc. But today we compete with Apple, with Cisco, with IBM, with Yahoo, etc. So there's a whole bunch of new competitors for us out there. You must have known of, you must know the company called Procter & Gamble. And as you know, Procter & Gamble is well known for selling what? Diapers and makeup and stuff like that. Household goods, you go to the supermarket and you buy Procter & Gamble goods, toothpaste, stuff like that. Now suddenly we realize that Procter & Gamble is a competitor to ABB. And interestingly, most people at ABB do not know that. And the answer very simply is, Procter & Gamble owns Duracell batteries, the ones you put in your flashlights, in your calculators, in your transistor radios. And they are now using their battery technology to move into grid-scale storage. And now suddenly they are competing with us, and suddenly we are bumping up against them. But I can assure you, most people in ABB who are drawing these strategic maps about competitors probably don't have Procter & Gamble on their mind. And the other factor is, it's not us. Most of our competitors are out there creating corporate venture groups, whether it's the Schneiders, the Siemens, the GEs, the BPs, the GMs of the world. So we are all out there looking at new technologies and looking at entrepreneurs and new ideas. So if we don't do that, our competition will move in there sooner and block the IP or acquire those companies. So we all have to learn to get paranoid, just like Andy Grove told us, and start looking at companies around the world and see what kind of technologies are out there. So coming back to the whole notion of, so why do we invest in new companies, and how do we consider something to be of strategic interest to us? A simple way of looking at it is I refer to as the 3 L's. The first L is learn. We just want to learn about something. So we sometimes invest in a company, whether it's a new silicon carbide company or a new gallium nitride company. It may not be relevant for us today, or the technology may be too early, but we want to be part of the discussion. We want to be part of the the coffee room discussion as to what's happening in this technology, where it is going, what kind of impact can it have, what kind of disruption can it have. So we are paying attention. So we just want to learn. We just want to be part of the discussion, part of the information flow. That may not lead to something else, but it's critical for us to have an ear to the ground. An important part of being paranoid. The second one is leap. So for years, we have sort of swum in our own swim lanes, and we kind of stick to our knitting, and that's sometimes very important. But industries change, technologies change, new industries emerge, old industries die. So take cybersecurity, for example. It's a brand new industry. Now, a bunch of people who are mechanical, electrical engineers who make transformers and motors, what do we know about cybersecurity? And so the best way to do that is to either go and buy a company, which is very expensive and you're not sure whether you really know what you're doing, or you invest in a company and you learn through that. And then if you think you like the concept and if you're comfortable with the market risk, you're comfortable with the technology risk, that could lead to a potential acquisition. So that's the second L, which is the leap. The third L is the leverage, which is there are often technologies which are making your own company, your own businesses disruptive, but you already have the resources and the market access and the technology and the distribution channels, etc. So you can, by investing in those companies and eventually potentially buying those companies, you can leverage your existing assets. And so these are some of the reasons why we like to invest in emerging companies. I just want to share with you some of the trends we have seen, and this is just an eye chart. And by the way, I have left a copy of this with the association, so if anybody is interested in the presentation, you can have a copy of this. So there are things out there which you've heard of, like Internet of Things, or machine-to-machine communications, big data, 3D printing, cybersecurity, I've mentioned already, robots, biomimicry. These are all emerging areas which have in one way, shape, or form some impact on what we do in our business. And that's the way we as the corporate venture group sort of look at companies in these various spaces. So if you are an entrepreneur or are thinking of being an entrepreneur, obviously one of the first places you folks turn to or should turn to is a financial VC. But increasingly in the world of renewable energy, clean tech, or anything which has an industrial or utility application, it's increasingly important now to work with a corporate investor. So whether it's an ABB, a GE, a Siemens, a Schneider, or any of these, because it's not just the money we bring to the table, but we can also help the entrepreneur from a validation perspective. So if you go to a large utility and say, listen, ABB is an investor, suddenly the utility feels, okay, if ABB has done the due diligence and ABB has looked at this company, this must be a viable company. Very often you need to scale your technology. Things may work in the lab, things may work at a small scale, but you need to scale them. You need to build plans, so you may need to outsource it. And companies like us can help you from a technology perspective, from a capital perspective. So it becomes very useful to have a corporate investor. And again, the quid pro quo is, from our perspective, we get access to and visibility to a whole bunch of new technology. These are just a couple of slides to show the kind of segments we are interested in. I won't spend time on them, but it's the Internet of Things, the big data, cybersecurity, smart grids, a whole range of applications which most of you in the room would be familiar with. And you can, if you're interested, spend some time looking at the presentation later on to look at this. The other thing we also do, we look at close to 1,000 transactions a year. So the great thing today is it's no longer just Silicon Valley. It's not just no longer Germany. It's no longer just the UK and other places where technology is coming from. You are now having some enormous amounts of talent coming out of places like Israel, China, Korea, etc. By the way, some of the two most exciting places I have seen some technology, one is Estonia. They have some amazing amount of software technology out there, and they're the ones who are proud to point out that they're the ones who built Skype. And the other places, some of you may know, some of you may not, is Kenya. And Kenya is coming up with a very interesting mobile technology, and just like Southeast Asian countries leapfrog the landline and move straight into mobile technology, a lot of countries in Africa are leapfrogging the laptop and moving straight to mobile technology. So whether it's communication, whether it's payment technologies, etc., there's a lot of new ideas coming out of places like that. So we get to see close to 1,000 deals from around the world, but we also, as we start seeing trends out there, as we start seeing new areas evolving, we then identify sectors which we want to study from bottom up, and then we team up with our corporate research center people, bring in the right business people, and then we study these industries and sectors from the ground up. So areas like energy storage, microinverters, waste to energy, waste heat recovery, etc. These are areas. And then we identify and map the space and decide which companies we want to invest in. This is just an example of some of the companies we've invested in, ranging from smart grids to cybersecurity. We have two investments in Israeli companies. One is called Takadu, which is in the water leakage management business, and one is called Pendulum, which is in the LiDAR business, which uses LiDAR to measure the speed and direction of wind. And we are very actively looking at other Israeli companies as well. Finally, if any of you folks are interested in working with a corporate VC, be it ABB or anybody else, just a couple of tips for you. You have to approach us slightly different than you do a financial investor. A financial investor really could care less which sector you are in so long as you make money for him. We do care what sector you are in. It has to have some relevance for us. So find companies who have venture capital outfits in the space you are in. But before you approach them, educate yourself about their strategy and about their priorities. Because you just can't come there and say, hey, I have a great idea. You have to come there and say, this is a great idea, but here is why it will be helpful for you, ABB. And here is how ABB, it fits into your vision of where you want to see smart grids growing, etc. So those are areas where it would be helpful. And it would also be helpful if you can say to us, here is how we would like you to help us. Are you looking for technology support? Are you looking for market access? Are you looking for validity? Are you looking for help in scaling up your technology? So we understand exactly what kind of help you're looking for and whether that's practical for us or not. So just a quick 15 minutes on what corporate venturing is and what ABB does. I thank you for your time, and happy if you have any questions later on to address it outside. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Girish. The next presenter